So it seems like the war between Dragon Ball GT and Dragon Ball Super fans is still ongoing. It's still alive and very well. And I'll be very honest with you guys. I do not think that there is an end in sight. But I will tell you guys this. As long as I'm here, there's always a fighting chance.
What is your name? Young Shogun. What's happening?
But forget all that. Why am I making this video? Well, to put it this way, I'm still looking for a Dragon Ball Super fan, or someone who likes Dragon Ball Super, or someone who thinks that Dragon Ball Super is better than Dragon Ball GT to actually tell me why Dragon Ball Super is better than Dragon Ball GT. And I have yet to find anyone that could actually do that. So I was sent this video and asked my opinions on it, and I just thought, well, then I'll just react to it with you guys and see if this content creator by the name of Big Toon can tell us why Dragon Ball Super is better than Dragon Ball GT.
So in this video, I don't hope to, but I am going to determine which is better between these two. And the first thing I want to talk about are the characters. I think Dragon Ball Super was leagues better with introducing new characters. Hit, Kaba, Zamasu, Topo are all examples of characters I think most fans enjoyed. Dragon Ball GT does have Baby, and he may be greater than any character introduced in Dragon Ball Super, but GT just has so many misses. Lord Lu, Super 17, Legic, most of the Shadow Dragons, Rildo, and these were all characters that were meant to have a major impact in the story.
I've already seen this video, and what I've noticed that there's a lot of bias in this video. It seems like he'll state that Dragon Ball Super is better in a particular area, but then go to Dragon Ball GT as to why it's not good, instead of actually telling us what is good about Dragon Ball Super's characters. And another thing he will do is he will use the fans' opinions as a justification as to why Super is better than Dragon Ball GT, but he doesn't give the same benefit to Dragon Ball GT. For example, I am a Dragon Ball GT fan and I enjoyed the characters that he listed, but he gives his own personal opinions on Dragon Ball GT. But when it came down to Super, he stated that those are characters that the fans enjoyed. Okay, but there's fans of GT as well. So I don't really understand this argument.
But from when I first watched GT up until now, I could care less about them. I genuinely don't think anyone prefers the GT characters over the characters in Super.
Then you absolutely did not look for any. There are plenty of them, and they are actually down in your comments as well.
It's a book.
But there may be people that prefer GT's transformations over Super's. And anytime this point is brought up, it's really just a conversation about Super Saiyan 4. And as much as I love that form, it can't stand up to all of Super's transformations by itself.
That's a quantity over quality argument. Would you rather have the best burger or many of the shitty burgers? Just because you get a bunch of stuff doesn't make it better than that one. It doesn't compare. I would rather take the best burger you could give me over plenty of shitty burgers.
So even if you don't like any of those forms individually more than Super Saiyan 4, as a collective, it really isn't a conversation.
Why the fuck you lying? Why?
Now, I know I've been beating up on Dragon Ball GT, but for you GT fans out there, this next part is for you. And I do think GT was better with getting an emotional reaction out of me than Super. It wasn't very often, but Dragon Ball Super didn't do it at all. When the Earth was about to explode and Piccolo stayed so he could die too, that one got me. And then seeing Piccolo's conversation with Gohan about his decision, that got me too. Then Gohan got down on his hands and knees and cried out for the person he might have had the deepest relationship with. Seeing that and knowing how their friendship started is what really hits you in the feels. And this isn't the 4-year-old crybaby that's doing this or the 11-year-old prodigy. This is a grown man with a wife and child bawling his eyes out for the death of his friend. Now, I'm not going to talk about what happened immediately before and after that moment because context does kind of make that scene worse.
And you see how he kind of just sneaked in a diss right there to Dragon Ball GT, which is why I think that there's kind of a bias in his video because he does not do the same thing for Dragon Ball Super.
And then that ending, man. That's why my feelings towards this show will always be confusing for some to understand. I mean, how can a show this bad have an ending so good?
And this is what I'm talking about. The anime is not that bad. It's not.
For me, consistency is always important. I'd rather something always be good over something having the chance to be great, but could also be disastrous. And surprisingly enough, Dragon Ball Super and GT are both consistent. It's just that Dragon Ball Super is consistently okay, and if I only count brand new stories, I'd say Dragon Ball Super was consistently good.
And I hope you guys are really starting to see the bias that I'm talking about. You can't sit here and state that, oh, if I only count new stories for Dragon Ball Super, then it's consistently good. No, you got to count all the stories. And because you're not going to give Dragon Ball GT the same benefit, I think that's highly unfair.
But Dragon Ball GT is consistently disappointing. I really hope that we can all agree that there is only one good arc in Dragon Ball GT. One. Two are awful, and another had its moments. So Dragon Ball GT was consistent.
You said that Dragon Ball GT had one good arc and two awful ones, and then one had its moments. The fact that you said that Dragon Ball GT had one good arc means that the show is not consistent then. All the arcs would have to be awful for the show to be consistent. You can't have one good one and then two bad ones, and that shows inconsistency, right? So yeah, you're kind of wrong on that.
And for Super, if I start from the tournament against Universe 6, I think most would agree that these were good.
And more of his bias is really showing here when he's counting the fans' opinions in this matter. Their opinions doesn't matter. This is your video. You're supposed to be telling me why Dragon Ball Super is better than Dragon Ball GT, not using fans as justification as to why Dragon Ball Super is better than Dragon Ball GT. Their opinions doesn't matter. And then cutting everything off before the Universe 6 tournament. And that to me really just shows a clear bias in your video. Because like I said again, he's not giving that same benefit to Dragon Ball GT. Like even for Dragon Ball Super fans, wouldn't y'all say that's a bit unfair?
There are some that would argue that the Black Arc and the Tournament of Power were great. I wouldn't, but some would.
There are some that would say the Super 17 arc was great. Again, so what? And again, this is your video. Their opinions do not matter. But this is what I'm talking about. Again, he will not give Dragon Ball GT the same benefit.
It wasn't a situation where the Black Arc was a 10 out of 10 and the Tournament of Power was a 5. And to be frank, Dragon Ball's writing has never been that dynamic where the quality could even have the potential to vary greatly from arc to arc.
I'm actually going to have to disagree with this as well. I know, only because of the Buu saga. I would say that the Buu saga did diminish some of the value of the rest of the series. Not saying that the Buu saga was bad. It's more like if you want to say Dragon Ball Z is a 10 out of 10, but then the Buu saga is a 6 out of 10. I could kind of see that. And I'm not going to go into full detail here, but the point is that the only consistent Dragon Ball anime out there is the OG. That anime is consistent all the way through. Everything else pretty much has its good and bads, you know? So, I mean, it is what it is, but yeah, I would have to disagree with this statement. But if you look at Dragon Ball Super, the Goku Black arc was one of the worst arcs I've ever seen in any anime. It dragged the whole show down because it literally didn't have to be there. It didn't change anything inside the story. You could really just cut the whole Goku Black arc out and nothing would change about the series at all. It really brought the series down more than it helped lift the series up. So when you talk about Dragon Ball Super, the quality did vary from arc to arc.
And then when you just compare the overall stories for Super and GT, Super wins there too. I really love the first episode of GT over Super's.
Surprise, surprise, surprise. He's going into more details on Dragon Ball GT's story instead of going into detail on Dragon Ball Super's story. And it feels like he's trying to contrast these two anime but only give one side of the story, to which I find very dodgy. But to be honest, I do not think that he really can tell you anything about the story of Dragon Ball Super because, in my honest opinion, I do not believe Super has a story. Now, I was on Black Sasuke's channel, and I was on a Discord call with him and a couple of other content creators. Shout out to Sham the God, Kage, and Trench World. And also there was a couple of his subscribers up there as well. And I asked the Dragon Ball Super fan, what was Dragon Ball Super even about? This was his response.
Ask a lot of Super fans this. What is Dragon Ball Super about?
Goku. Oh!
So you see, even Dragon Ball Super fans don't know what the story is even about. So I would ask Big Toon, how can Dragon Ball Super story be better than Dragon Ball GT story if it don't even have a story?
And then most of the stories were just revenge based. The Black Star Dragon Balls arc was about finding them so they could save the Earth, but they were only used because of what Goku did to the Pilaf gang. The Baby arc is about revenge. Super 17 is about revenge, and in a weird way, the Shadow Dragon arc was about revenge as well. That gets old fast. Super had far more variation in the motives for its antagonists.
Then please, for the love of God, name them. You know what's funny? The irony in what he just said is that he just showed Frieza punching Goku, and Frieza is back because he wants revenge. I could say that future Trunks wants revenge on Goku Black. I could say that some of the fighters in the Tournament of Power wants revenge on Goku for even starting the Tournament of Power. And if I add the last two movies, Broly kind of wants revenge for his father getting killed. And I could say the Red Ribbon Army is back for revenge. And then there's a lot of revenge-based stories in Dragon Ball Z as well. And you know, I'm not even mad at Dragon Ball Super for that. But you can't really just knock Dragon Ball GT for that and not do the same for Dragon Ball Super. And if you really want to get even more critical than that, that Frieza's revenge arc is on a loop with him now coming back again as Black Frieza.
Super is better than GT. GT's ending has a special place in my heart, so I like GT more because of that, but I do not think it's better than Super. I actually don't think it's close.
Maybe it's me, but I just can't really comprehend that. How can you really like something more than something else, but think that other thing is better? Like, I don't know any situation where I like something more than something else, but think that other thing is better. Maybe you guys down in the comment section can explain this to me, but I just, my brain is just not clicking with that.
I'll give GT this though. GT had many more original and unique concepts, but like I said before, GT is a great example of poor execution. I prefer quality over originality, but if originality determines quality for you, then I 100% understand a GT over Super opinion.
Super? Quality? With all seriousness though, you kind of contradicted yourself here. The fact that you stated that you like Dragon Ball GT more than Dragon Ball Super would kind of mean that you also prefer, in your own words, originality over quality. But hey man, it is what it is. So I'm guessing that I'm still going to go on the hunt and try to find one person that can tell me why Dragon Ball Super is better than GT. I would love to make a video one day telling everybody why Dragon Ball Super is better than GT, but for right now, I cannot do that. Dragon Ball GT is still on top of Dragon Ball Super, and it's not even close. And it's never going to catch up to Dragon Ball GT, and that's the way it's supposed to be.